Welcome to Rock the Crown.
Welcome to Rock the Crown, Season 7. I am Nafisa Fudail Abdul Malik. Y'all know how to be my new last name.
Okay.
And I'm here with my fabulous queens today. Naima, Nefertari.
Hey.
And we always miss our queen, Dia. But
Dada, where you is?
Yes, we always miss her. Assalamu alaikum to everyone out there. Hello to everyone out there in Crown Nation. We got a great topic for you today. House hacking, new living solutions to increase that what? Cash flow. So today we're going to dive a little bit into house hacking. I know people have heard about the term. Some may know what it is. Some may not know what it is. Some may have heard of it at all. But we're going to find a little bit about it today. We're going to dive right into it. Mm-hmm. And just so I can kind of introduce you to the topic, like house hacking, like what is that? Mm-hmm. Well, the definition that they give you is, and I want to make sure that I read it to you all, is house hacking means finding ways to generate income from your home. Okay, that's the general definition that they gave you, right? But, I like to think of this as really just a new term, right? This is just a new term for an old concept. Right. Because most of us, either our parents, us, or our great parents used to have maybe somebody living with them, uncle and them be renting out the basement. They had a 2-family or 3-family, and somebody else lived on the 3rd floor, and cousin and them lived on the 2nd floor. Or somebody was coming up for the summer, and so they rented such and such. So this is really not a new concept, right, ladies?
That's right. That's right. Okay. We are familiar with that.
Yes, especially in our community where you have people coming up from the South, and now that we all trying to migrate back down to the South, you got people coming up from the North to stay with us in the South, and I'm back on I don't know, where am I? East?
Northeast.
Right, but so we want to talk about today, what we want to focus on is the whole house hacking concept as a way to generate cash flow and the different things that people are doing nowadays to really kind of use their home or even buy property to generate extra cash flow.
Yeah.
So we want to kind of dive in and talk about that a little bit. And the strategy is real simple, right? You live in a house, you rent out a room. You got a duplex, right? You live in one and you rent out the other units. Mm-hmm. You can even do it with a larger multifamily property as well, Yeah. And you don't even have to own it nowadays, right? So we're going to talk about the different ways that you can do house hacking, but that's just a general, strategy.
Nafisa, you were talking about like family members living with you and things like that. And it also reminds me of like here in Atlanta, where families rent out rooms to some of the students as well. Mm-hmm. And so I know personally, I had 2 boarder students in my home during their high school years. and several of my friends' sons have lived with us.
Mhm.
But I don't know if that's house hacking because I ain't getting no money.
Right. No, you
The
gotta
last part,
get some money for it to be
I got the
qualified.
money on the other people, but the
Create that
last
cash
part,
flow.
they didn't get no money. That might just be house sharing.
Right, right.
But
And
yeah.
it remind me too about the border houses, right? This used to
Mhm.
be a big thing back in the day.
Yes.
People might have, a huge house or whatever, or 10 something bedrooms or 6 bedrooms or whatever, and they would rent out the rooms and they were like, rooming houses. That's what
Yeah.
they called them rooming houses. And then, the people would live in one, or they might live in out back in the one that they built back, in the backyard or something like that. So like I said, this is not a new concept, but it's just
Yeah, and I was gonna say, and a lot of people are doing that now. They may not realize it's called house hacking, but even today,
Right.
a lot of people still do that, renting out their rooms. And what it also made me think about was, which is different, because you have to actually be living in the property. But Airbnb, a lot of times when you look up that, and it'll show you that it's actually a room, like a room to the house, not
Right.
necessarily the whole house, even though we know you have whole house Airbnbs that
right.
you can rent out too. And so this is where you have somebody who's actually living with you permanently in a room or on a level or in the basement, whatever it is, and creating that extra income, creating the extra cash flow. But you have to actually be living in the house now. You have to
Right. Right.
Right, for it to be house hacking.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing too, of course we said we wanted to focus on the cash flow, but the question comes up like, does it even make financial sense?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and you don't have to dive too deep into the finances to know that this makes sense, right? Because
Right.
especially like if you have a mortgage, right? If you have a mortgage, you have a house, right? You got a mortgage, you paying $2,000, $3,000 a month, and you can rent out 2 or 3 of those other bedrooms now that your kids have gone to college or moved out or whatever.
Right.
$500, $600, $700. Those 3 other rentals, if you rent them out, let's say for $700, especially if they got their own separate bath, $700 a piece, that's $2,100. Your mortgage is $2,000. That's covering your mortgage without you having to put up anything, and a little extra $100. So of course it makes financial sense, and they paying down your principal and interest on your house that you own.
Yeah.
So it seems to me to make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Even from a financial standpoint. And even if you're talking about a duplex or a triplex, of course you living in one unit, still those the rents that the other people are paying, hey, they for the most part, a lot of times they cover the full amount of the mortgage. So you just left with either the money that you were going to pay, you could pocket that, save it, reinvest it to buy maybe another property or some other use, or you could still pay down your principal quicker.
Yeah.
So it definitely makes financial sense if it's done the right way.
Right.
So that's definitely something to keep in mind. And then too, like some different ideas about how to house hack, because there isn't just one way to do it.
Right.
We already talked about, if you live in a house, just say a single family house, and you might want to rent out some of your rooms.
Right.
That would be one way to do it.
And a multifamily home. So if you're like going to buy, a multifamily home, and then of course, like you were saying earlier, you may live in one of the homes, but of course you have 8 other ones that are available, and so other people are using that. I know that one thing, when the children were growing up, we lived in a duplex, and it was actually owned by my children's father's mother. So it was like, okay, they stayed. Her brother stayed on one side, and we stayed on the other. And that was house hacking, and didn't realize it. Yeah, but it's like, okay, yeah. Parents do that a lot with the children as well.
Oh yeah. So multifamily homes, like Naima just mentioned, but also, kind of as we said earlier, short-term rentals for like the rooms. You can do long-term or short-term for that. Or just get some housemates. Having somebody, now you really got to be careful who you do a little background check and all of that for you decide on who you're gonna bring into your home. because that could get messy.
Right,
Yes.
right, exactly.
So that's important. And of course, the whole idea is to generate cash flow. So you want to make sure that you have someone who it can pay,
Right.
taking care of actually paying for what they need to pay for, whether they're family or not. We know how things can get, with family. So that's really important. And just thinking about the whole upkeep of the property and, what you need to do, how you need to do, all of those little things are important. So
You know what's so interesting about when you say the housemates, like now in college, there I can't remember if it was a show or a story or something. But anyway, the father, it was a man, he was talking to his children. He had did like a video for his children. He was like, I'm about to give you the best gift ever. I'm about to buy everybody a house. And
mhm.
so he was saying that in just buying the house, even if they didn't want to live in it, it was a part of basically their financial future and investment, right? So when your child
Mhm.
is a child is born, buy that child a house is what he was saying. And then even now, like as children are going to school, some parents are buying bigger houses for their children and
Mhm.
then renting out all of the other rooms. So
Mhm.
again, buying a house, and your child, instead of having to pay room and board that goes to absolutely nothing, you're actually having other people help you pay for that house, and your child will then have room and board to go to school. So that's something to really, really think about as well, especially if, like us, we all, grew up together, our children know each other. But if you imagine if we had decided, hey, let's send all of our
Yeah.
boys to such and such
Mhm.
and such, let's buy a home. And if they were all able to stay in a house together, that would have been a beautiful thing. But now we can
Mhm.
think about it for our grandchildren if we can't
Right.
do it now with our children. But yeah, something to definitely think about, how that investment would go such a long, long way for everyone, really.
Well, it ain't too late. It ain't too late for
I
them.
think
They're
it's
a little
not
older, but it ain't too late.
right.
Going and setting them seeds in, sowing them seeds.
Yes.
But
Hmm.
as you were speaking about just the different rooms and renting, I'm just thinking about even certain styles of different places where you may live. Like, Nafisa said she's on, Northeast coast. You're in DC area, which is very similar to New York too. So you have a lot of the high-rise buildings, and they're all next to each other, and it's very expensive. Like, so people are
Yes.
looking for something. For example, I have my son in New York. He's renting a room, and I think it's like a 6-bedroom place, but everything else is shared space. They have different bathrooms, but then
Right.
the space and the kitchen. But this
Yeah.
guy who's renting is a little bit different from house hacking because he doesn't actually live in the property. But a lot of people are doing this,
Yeah.
because of
Yeah.
just being able to afford a certain thing, especially in whatever area, depending on where you live at.
Right. And you bring up a good point too. Sometimes what method you use to house hack depends on your location, because
Mm.
that brought it to mind too. Like I know when I was in Portland, Oregon, right?
Mhm,
When I went to
mhm.
go visit there, and it's expensive. It's expensive there too on the
Mm.
West Coast. But what a lot of people were doing is that they were buying, like a regular house, and then they might build an extra unit, another dwelling out back, right? And
Okay.
they will
Mhm.
rent that out. So a
Right.
lot of people, a
Kind of like
lot of
another
people
home
were doing
suite.
that. So
Yeah.
they would build out an extra or take a shack or something like that and convert it,
Mm-hmm.
or a detached garage and convert it, and then they will rent that out. So and it's
Yeah.
you kind of have two dwellings, but that was a way for them to do it there in Portland, Oregon, and a lot of people did that. And here
Mm-hmm.
in
Oh man.
DC, like you mentioned, they have a lot of row houses. And a lot of these
Mm.
row houses are 3 levels, sometimes 4
Yeah.
levels, and most
Mm-hmm.
people will rent out the basement to someone else. They may
Mm.
live on the second and third level, and then they may rent out the top level
Yeah.
Right.
and build a staircase out the back for them to, go
Yeah.
up to that level. So
Mm-hmm.
people do it differently depending on what your location is,
Yeah.
and but there's tons of different ways to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's so interesting that you say that, Nafisa, because when I was growing up and lived in Texas, so many people were converting their garages into living space. And it was like you were, the family if you had a converted garage, right? And so what they would do is, of course, convert the garage into either a master bedroom suite or
Mhm.
a second living room where the kids could play. And so,
Mhm.
as a master bedroom suite, of course, then you're able, of course, to have more rooms that you can do more things with, which, of course, then in turn, hey, if you have that other master suite, then you can rent that out for a larger profit because now
Mhm.
you have your garage that you converted. And then also just kind of thinking about all those places where you can use the basement and how many places really do have basements that can be rented out because some basements have their own entrances. And that's always such a great idea and concept to think about. And now portable buildings.
Yeah.
People
Oh,
are
yeah.
getting portable buildings. So there is a brother and sister team from Ghana that live here in the United States. They have literally started a multi-family home building. They live in one of the units, and all the other ones they rent out. But what they did was stack portable buildings on top of each other and created a multi-family unit, and they are gorgeous. I
Mhm.
forgot their YouTube channel, but I have to share that in the link later. But yeah, that I was like, I need to be doing that, dude. Especially again for people who are like college students that need places to stay who are okay with a smaller place. Because tiny homes are one thing, but when you're living there temporarily, it's kind of a different mindset. And just because if you're going to college, you can easily live in a smaller space for a shorter period of time. But yeah, that's something else to think about.
Right.
Some of you, both of you guys were talking about something reminding me of my situation, like with my family. When you talk about buying a house for your children, this and that, with my mom and my dad, and even back to my grandmother on my mom's side, when you have family that buy up different multiple properties and they just have them, whether they renting them out or whatever, that also gives the opportunity to help your family in ways. And so I remember when I moved back to Kansas City from Norfolk, Virginia years ago, I was literally renting a house out from that my grandmother used to have. My mother actually grew up in that house, so I was renting that for a little bit. But when you talk about having a basement, there's so much that they could have done with that as well. For me, I developed a salon and redid the whole thing, and it had its own entrance. So I used it for business purposes too. But that's another way. Like when we think about old houses and redoing them,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. It's just so many opportunities to be able to make money, And so
Right.
the other thing to think about, a lot of times, especially as African Americans, when we have houses that our families have, they may pass away or people trying to figure out what to do with it. This is an idea, to
Yeah.
fix it up, because a lot of times we try to sell off a property that maybe has been in the family for 100 years, and
Yeah.
Okay.
don't get rid of it because
Don't
there's
do
Right.
that. Don't
don't get
sell nothing.
right.
Right. And
Yeah.
two, we want to also keep in mind that we mentioned several different ways that you can actually even do a rental, right? So you can do the short-term rentals,
Right.
where you
Mhm.
do something like Airbnb, where you're doing it like renting out a room at night, or even like a unit at night. Some people are putting, let's say if they live in a duplex or a triplex or something like that, sometimes people are putting those other units on Airbnb instead of just
Yep.
leasing them out for like a
Mhm.
12-month lease or something like that. So
Right.
keep in mind you have that with short-term rentals. And then
Mhm.
we all are familiar with the long-term rentals where you're renting it for like a 6 months or a year at a time. Usually it's a
Right.
year at a time that you're renting them out. But
Right.
there's also what they call midterm rentals, right? And
Mhm.
this is where it's longer than, let's say, a night or a couple of days or whatever, but it's not as long as like 12 months. Like you might think like traveling nurses when they
Mhm.
come into a city or something like that. They
They
may
might
rent
stay
out
put in
rent
one.
out something for like 2 months or 3 months, and that's
Mhm.
their assignment, and
Right.
then go on to another city. So
Right.
that might be something, especially if you near a hospital, if you live near a hospital, or a property that you're interested in is near a hospital. That may be a great little midterm thing to tap
Mhm.
into
Mhm.
Right.
house hacking on a midterm basis, because a lot of times those are professionals that are traveling, so you can charge them more money.
Mhm.
And it's a little bit more secure, so okay, for 3 months, I'm going to be getting $8,000, a month or whatever. So
Mhm.
Right.
that type of thing really, really can work well too. And there are even whole agencies set up to help these professionals find those midterm
Mhm. Yep.
uh, rentals. So that's something to keep in mind too. especially if you still kind of leery of renting out just to anyone, you might want to look into like, professionals like traveling nurses or traveling doctors or something like that. That might be an area to think about. Yeah.
And so are they put on like a special list? Like, how will people find them? How will these professionals find them? Just marketing or?
No, yeah, the professionals usually go through, a lot of times they go through an agency, right? Their whole agency set up, and all they do is try to find like short-term housing for professionals.
Right.
Yeah, so there's like a whole platform. I don't know the name of it, but I know there's a whole like type platform that they, just like we access Airbnb for
They
different.
have some on Airbnb.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they
Now
probably
that
have
with
some
all
on
these
there.
different namings, they have it on there. It's just named something totally different now. But yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that might be something. And here's another thing too. We talked a lot about, for those who own houses, but another way you can house hack, and this is my son. I heard about this before, but he's the one who actually did it. Went and rented out a 3-bedroom apartment, and then he rented out the other rooms. Right. So he lives in one room and then he rented out the other rooms, which is a little bit different than usually roommates. A lot of times when they rent a place, they're usually both on the lease. It's usually 2 or 3 people who both are everybody's responsible. Everybody's on the lease, that type of thing. So no, he just went and got it. And then he rents out the room. So you don't necessarily have to, in order to house hack, you don't have to own the property. That's the thing I was saying. Some people are doing it with rental units as well. They're just the primary person that's responsible, for the lease and stuff like that. But they're doing it as a way for that. And I think that's a great thing, for young people. Of course, Neff said earlier, you do got to screen. But usually it's they're doing it with their friends or whatever. So they already know whether they got money or not. So
Yeah, and just also cautioning people when you do get that rental, if you're renting something out, make sure that you're reading your contract, because there are some properties that do allow for subletting or subleasing, but some don't. And so what you don't want to do is find yourself in a situation where if say for instance you lived in a condo or something like that, or you even rented a condo and then you put those rooms on Airbnb, things like that. I had a friend who did that, and basically they told her she had a week to get out. And so she had been living there for almost a year, right? And leasing the rooms out, and that was just an unfortunate situation. She had to like move out really, really quickly. So you definitely want to make sure that you're reading the terms of wherever you're staying, and if that is something that you can and are allowed to do.
Yeah. So that's just something to keep in mind. Let's see, what else do we want to say about?
What about like buying it? Like, say for instance, if you don't own it, how can you start house hacking? I guess just kind of like thinking about different ways that people can get the money and get a house and then start house hacking.
Yeah. So in terms of doing that, of course, you could do it like you would regularly purchase a house, right? Like you would regularly purchase a house, or like you would regularly purchase like a multi-unit. You can get a multi-unit the same way you purchase a house under the same type of loans, as long as it's under, I think it has to be 4 units or less.
Okay.
You can still get an FHA mortgage and stuff like that. So if you're able to get a house, it might be a good thing to do, especially if you're a first-time homeowner. And you're just now getting started. It might be a good idea for you to try to buy, if you're in an area that has like duplexes and fourplexes, because I know Atlanta doesn't have a whole lot of those, but some geographical areas, they do have a lot more duplexes, triplexes, quads. So that might be a good way for you to invest initially, is to buy one of these multi-unit type properties instead of a single family home, because then everyone has their own unit that you are renting out. So that might be a way to get started, or you might get started like we just now originally said, depending on a person's cash flow situation. If you are renting, to rent out your rooms, if it's allowable, through your lease, that might be a way for you to build up your cash flow to then purchase a home.
Yeah.
That might be a way for you to do that as well. So you just really gotta, look at those. Those are some of the main ways, or you might want to build on to what you already have if you're able to do that. And another thing too, a lot of times when people become empty nesters, right, and they've been living in a large house or whatever, sometimes they want to downsize, because they like, the kids are gone. I don't need a 5-bedroom house anymore. I don't need a 6-bedroom house anymore. Well, one of the things they can do is they might want to rent that out, rent out the other rooms.
Yeah.
Generate cash flow, whatever, and then they could use that cash flow to either buy them another property that they actually want to live in, or if they want to move more in town now so they can walk around to different shops and stuff like that. So that might be an answer, because normally when people downsize, they just think about, oh, let me go ahead and sell this house,
Right.
use the money to go there. But if you can still hold on to the property to get cash out, for a short period of time, that might be a way for you to keep the property, keep the asset, and still have cash flow until you can buy something, in town or, wherever you want to live.
Right.
That might be an option.
Now, Fisa, you were talking about like the loans, like how you can do a multi-unit. Also, one of the things I was thinking about with getting a loan for purchasing a home is a lot of times you can like purchase a home for a lot less if you buy something that needs to be fixed up, like a fixer-upper. And so you can like purchase a home, just like investors do. But then there's a thing where you have the loan for moving in, but then they give you the extra money for fixing it, to actually fix the house up.
Right.
So that's like another way of looking at it too. So when then after you do that and then you fix it up, you really can, rent it out for a nice fee too, because you got a nice modern space that is up to date and with all the little amenities and all of that. So some people might look at it and think, oh, I can't afford to do it. But if you can, you get a home and you find a house that maybe might need a little work done. That's another way of doing it.
Yeah. That's what I want to do.
Yeah,
I always wanted like an old house refurbished anyway. So
yeah. And also too, we've been talking a lot today about, we talked about what is house hacking. We talked about the different type of ways that people house hack. We even in terms of the different types of property, also in terms of the different types of leasing and the benefits of house hacking. But we also want to make you aware that there are some mistakes that you want to make sure you avoid if you decide to go down this route of house hacking. And one is, particularly if you're buying a new home, right? And when I say new home, I mean just one you haven't owned before, and you're thinking about, okay, you're trying to base your decision on, okay, I know I want a new home, and I know I want to house hack it and rent out these rooms or rent out a piece of it or whatever. You want to make sure that you do not choose an undesirable neighborhood. Right? So you want to make sure, you want to make sure that you choose a desirable neighborhood that people will want to rent a room or rent a unit if you're buying a multifamily in that particular neighborhood, right? Because whether you're doing short-term rentals, mid-term, or long-term, you want to make sure that you're continually being able to have cash flow and low vacancies.
Yeah.
Right? For that, if you're, to be able to maximize your money. So you want to choose a neighborhood that's desirable, that people will want to rent in that particular neighborhood.
Yeah.
So that's one thing you want to make sure that you do. Another is, and Naima, you alluded to this earlier, is another mistake that people make is ignoring what they call ordinances. But it may be an ordinance, like I said, for the people who wanted to build or convert their garage to actually another unit, where there may be, depending on your city or your location, there may be certain ordinances that prevent you from doing that, or maybe you got to have a special permit. So a lot of times people make these plans and already hired a contractor or whatever and started work on it, but you didn't get the proper ordinances, right? So then you're not going to either be able to build that, or if you are able to build it, you're not going to be able to rent it out or house hack it like you thought you was. So you want, particularly if you're building or you're thinking about converting a part of the property to this type of use, you want to make sure that you abide by any type of local ordinances, city ordinances, or whatever that they have.
Right.
Yeah, because that's a big
And,
thing.
and you know, and as people are like, okay, I want to do this. I know Neff and I were like, oh, we want to get an older home. Yeah, how much are those repairs, right? So
Right.
thinking about the repairs and how much
Mhm.
it's going to cost and the
Right.
upkeep of those repairs. So like, even though you repaired something, how much is it gonna? How much are you putting aside for just regular repairs on any
Right.
property that you're managing? Because you
Right.
now are a property manager in a sense.
Right, right. So you got to take those landlord duties seriously.
That
Mhm.
part.
And
Mhm.
that's another mistake that people make. They don't take those landlord duties seriously. Yeah, so you will have to do it. Of course, the more you systematize the
That's what's
experience,
important.
the better and the more smoother, the more organized you are. But you still have to take it seriously. Whether you're going to do short term, mid term, right?
That's the magic word right there. Systematizing. And that takes me into the next one, which is setting boundaries. You want to make sure, as a landlord, you want to be taken seriously and making sure they're not going to just be coming knocking at your door whenever, all hours of the night, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so these are some of the things that you really, really want to think about, the mistakes that people can make with house hacking. But setting boundaries is one of those things. So
Yeah.
calling for, you know,
Right.
boundaries. And so without that, you just want to be able to do what you need to do with the people that you having in there, and avoid these mistakes. So
Yeah.
Right. And the last thing I want to say, because y'all know I'm a business person, y'all know I'm a tax attorney, so we got to talk about taxes. You bringing in all this moolah, you bringing in all this dinero, all this money. You know Uncle Sam want his piece.
yeah.
You
Yep.
know
Okay.
he want his piece. Yes. So what happens? Even though you're just renting out a room, even though you're just renting out, some rooms, or you're renting out some of the units or whatever, you want to make sure that you have to claim that income.
Right.
Okay. You have to claim that income, and specifically because we're talking about rental property, whether you're renting out rooms or you're renting out units or whatever, but since you're talking about rental property, you have to do what's called a Schedule E, right, on your tax return. And that's basically you just listing out the property, and you're talking about what the income, the rents from that property, and all the expenses that's allocated to that particular property. And then, that's what you have to do. So just remember that you have to do that to claim that, those taxes and pay on that. And it's passive income.
Yes.
Right. And you're allowed to, as real estate, so if you occur a loss, you could take those losses against your regular income. So I always tell people it is an advantage to go ahead and do that. Right. And if you decide this is something you want to do on a real regular basis, and you're going to acquire other property, you might want to look into setting up an LLC and stuff like that. But if you're going to be more than just like your current home,
Right.
you might want to look into other different types of structural, especially if you're talking about a lot of money. You want to talk about that, but definitely deal with the taxes and always consult your tax professional. Right. So
Excellent. Excellent. Yes.
yeah. So that's all we have for house hacking. I hope you got a lot from it. I hope you learned a lot from it. Do you old ladies have any closing remarks on house hacking?
I would just say, don't be scared. Don't be scared. If you're thinking about it, just do a little research and see if it actually fits you. Sometimes we might shy away from things thinking like it's not me, but actually just do a little research, look into it. Maybe you might have a partner, might help you with investing and all of that, with just getting it going. Whether they're living with you or not, they might just help you get it going. You know what I'm saying? And then, just like any other
Well,
opportunity.
I'm going to leave off with a big, 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 big house hacking dream and vision that remember that you don't have to live small. You can live big.
That's right.
And so if you want to get a mansion
Mm-hmm.
with other people and everybody's still paying the same rent that they're normally paying, you could live in a
We've been
mansion.
talking about
Why
that for a
go
minute.
small when you can go big, right? Because I'm
Right.
always thinking about the bigger things and the finer things in life. So yes, let's go and get a mansion that is 800,000, $1 million, and let's go ahead and put 2 or 3 families in there. And guess what? It will be big enough that you
Mhm.
may not have to see each other on a regular basis, but that you can still maintain the current lifestyle you have, but
Mhm.
maintain a bigger lifestyle that you have. Okay, so that's my last house
I
hack.
love it. I love it.
Yes, I
Think
love
big.
that.
Think
And
big.
Naima, you know what that brought to mind? We really didn't talk about it a lot, but because the whole thing about house hacking is to generate cash flow. But you
Yes,
don't
Mhm.
necessarily always have to rent it out to an overnight guest or somebody that wants to live there.
right.
Nowadays in the Instagram world, right? Depending
Mhm.
on how you decorate it, a lot of times you have these people who are influencers who rent out a particular house or a particular room or just to do a photo shoot. So they
Yeah.
just rent it out for like 5 or 6 hours. And
Mhm.
then, and a lot of times there are people who actually set up their homes to do this while they're at work. So there are
Mhm.
Mhm.
platforms that they register their house at or their particular room or whatever. And people who do a lot of different photo shoots, or if they want to shoot a little commercial or there's something for their YouTube channel or whatever it is, and
Mhm.
then they will rent for 5 or 6 hours or whatever, do the
Yeah.
photo shoot, and that's it, and the person got their money. So that's something to keep in mind too, and
I
particularly in
love that.
Atlanta, because I have a client that has a huge big old whatever mansion in Buckhead, but he rents a lot out for videos. They,
And
they live
movies.
they live in like 10% of the mansion, right?
Right.
Mhm.
But the other 90%, they rent out for like photo shoots, for
Yes.
different films and movies. That kind
Yes.
of like, so it's not
Oh,
just about
smart.
renting out to your overnight guests. You might want to tap into, depending on the location that you are in, you might want to
Right.
tap into the film industry and all those
Yes.
people that you
Mhm.
scrolling have all those nice videos in the background and stuff. That may not necessarily be their place. They might be renting that
Yeah.
renting to do those different photo shoots and stuff. So that's
Yeah.
another idea too to keep in mind about that.
Yeah. I believe
Thank
that.
you for sharing that, Nafisa.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I hope we gave you some great ideas today about house hacking. I hope you learned a little bit. We
Mhm.
so glad that you took time out of your busy schedule to join us. And
Yes.
we are just looking forward to seeing you next week
Next
on
week.
Rock the Crown. Have a prosperous day.
Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, like us on Facebook, and subscribe to us on YouTube. Peace out.
Peace.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum
Assalamu
assalam.
alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.